All right, click the links for Odyssey, Bit Chute, or the Telegram if you're brave, or Sport Channel Coffee, the various other links. So let me try to combine things here. Disney, Todd, and Heather. America needs Jesus. America needs some very, very serious help. So this article and what I saw with the toy thing with Heather Antos chiming in, so much of what we have now can be traced back to Twitter and social media, and that the pressure that, insane people on social media are able to exert on companies and normal people by doxing and destroying your life if you disagree with the narrative in any shape whatsoever, which is, I did a video for Odyssey and Bit Chute today about the swimming thing and why more people aren't speaking out against that. It's because, like, say you're the parent of somebody, or one of the girls themselves. It's like, oh, well, what happens if you speak out, you go to court, you try to do something? It's like, oh, well, you'll be doxxed, you'll be fired, and you'll be blacklisted. So if the parents are, taking this legal methods, it's like they need to be in a position where they can't be fired from something, or they're just so independently wealthy, they're safe. And it's like, oh, that sucks. Or the girls themselves, is like, you're going to have your name associated with this lawsuit to protect women in sports. So what happens, after you win or lose, what happens to your name associated with the Google search? It's kind of, you're able to use social media pressure, and I don't know what you want to call it. Like, it's essentially boiled down to mob rule in America, which is really bad, because the collective IQ of the mob, as they say, right? So that's why with the swimming thing, things have been able to go as far as they have, because of game theory and like assignment of risk and reward. Nobody wants to put the risk on themselves to sacrifice for something that they're not sure. It's not really their, how do I say this? It's not really their tribe to sacrifice for. You're putting yourself out there for something, and like, there's a mob on Twitter who, like, you've got to be financially absolutely bulletproof to if you were trying to get behind a protest for this kind of thing. Otherwise, the mob will just go after you, which is why, like, you see what you're seeing now with women's sports. And it's, if you're sitting back and watching it, you're probably laughing your ass off. You're like, accelerate it absolutely to destruction. And then eventually it'll get so overwhelmed that when the system collapses and the pendulum starts to swing back the other way, it's like, well, when the pendulum swings back the other way, it's not going to stop at women's sports. It's probably going to keep swinging, which is, it's just the cycle of civilization, which, as I say, white rice lasts a long time. So you probably want to have a couple 100 pounds of white rice and some other things you might need to prepare. So a lot of the stuff that people see is like, they think it's traced back to Twitter, social media, but in the Twitter mobs, and that's true, but that's a 30,000 foot perspective. Companies are woke Bolsheviks. The mob of Twitter cat ladies is not pulling the strings as much as people think. There is pressure to a company, but it's different because companies are bulletproof. You're not going to dox and threaten, somebody who's pulling the strings at Disney, because they live in a gated community and they have almost infinite resources that, some Twitter, I don't know, what do they call it when they get signatures for something? It's like, yeah, what effect that would have on a big company the size of Disney is absolutely, nothing other than they would just laugh at it if they were aware of it. The thing is, Twitter pressure to a big company is nothing. It's really nothing. Say Disney didn't do what they're doing now. They didn't raise swap, and there was no BLT stuff, whatever, whatsoever in the films of the parks. It was just like Disney never progressed past the level of like the 1980s, 1990s, where there was some, there were making efforts in the 80s and 90s, and like most people would probably look at that and go like, yeah, the stuff you're doing in the early 80s and 90s is enough. That's enough. You made some outreach to be more inclusive. That's fine. Open up your audience. And most people are generally like kind. Like, they see it as like, if, okay, you don't see yourself in Disney, okay, you can throw a couple characters in there, which is what they had done by the 80s and 90s for sure. But say they had stopped there and they didn't just keep accelerating. And the thing is, I back in the 90s, I knew people who worked at, or I knew people who knew that industry, the Disney specifically. Because the thing about Disney is there are fanatics for Disney who the parks and the movies and all the crap that comes along with it. It's like, I don't know, it's like people who follow the Grateful Dead. I mean, most people don't know this. I wasn't one of them, but there's people who, and you definitely gotta have money to be this type of person. There's people who, I don't know. They're like in this Club Disney at like this platinum level, which is, means they're spending like $50,000 a year, $100,000 a year at Disney, which sounds crazy if you don't understand this. There is a mindset of people who are like this very wealthy people who are into Disney. So they knew people who were talking to people behind the scenes, and they were explaining Disney in the early 90s, and it was, the BLT community is already in Disney, working at Disney behind the scenes. They're not the ones pulling the strings, and ultimately that's the only thing that matters is who's pulling the strings. But there were at Disney already. But say things had not changed, and you had like Twitter is saying, oh, we need more BLT representation and all this kind of stuff. It would just be like screaming into the void. It would be that Chad meme of the guy with the chiseled chin, and he just looks and he says no. He says, I look up different ethnic histories online so I can learn how to be more efficiently racist. I guess that's probably me. If Disney ignored Twitter, the cat ladies couldn't do anything. It's one of the biggest companies on earth. They could boycott, but it actually wouldn't affect Disney any, because diversity and race swapping actually lose Disney money. This is not about money for Disney. This is a religion to them. Twitter has 1 billion users for sure, but I mean the active users are much, much less, and the active users who are able to act with a lever is even smaller than that. So Twitter doesn't have the footprint that people think it has. But the people who want the BLT stuff are way, way outnumbered by the quiet majority that don't. That's what I was talking about. The swimmer thing is like, if there's a social contract, social pressure, expectations, and risk and reward, but like if enough people, it's kind of mob theory in the other direction too. If there's like some hardcore Christian resurgence in America, or if you have enough people who are willing to say, okay, we need to stop this, then there's safety in numbers. And if you got a group of people who are pushing back against this, then as long as you reach critical mass, you get enough people who will join it. It would be like the wealthy people at first, because they're more insulated from being doxed and destroyed and stuff like this. But eventually, if you had a resurgence of probably focused around Christianity, some kind of morality, or some kind of just pushback, that pendulum is gonna look like, I don't know, what's the Edgar Allan Poe thing. My point is that there's a quiet majority out there who, if I had to guess, are getting really upset about, you're going to see whether the McCluskeys, she's out there with a 9, and it's not the low ready. It's that was pointed parallel to the ground. If I was in that mob and I saw the guy with the AR at the low ready, I'd be like, okay, this guy knows what he's doing. He's acting reasonable in response to a crowd of people. But you see the lady pull out that thing, and it's like, it's not in a holster. It's not the low ready. It's pointed at the mob. You're like, oh, just turn around, get the hell out of there. Your life is in immediate danger. Anyway, this is why you see this weird. It's because this game theory, this quiet majority is staying quiet because they fear being doxxed. But once that fear crosses over this threshold of they realize, like, oh, we have nothing left to lose. Like, you're losing this country. You're going to see a pushback. They're going to say, like, fuck it, we're going to do it anyway, no matter what the cost. Which is what happens, every so often with civilization. People reach that effort point. But until they reach that, you're going to see this weird continuation of cultural Marxism, this accelerationism of people just getting, weirder and weirder and weirder. And it's, if it continues, well, predictably, you can guess what's next on the horizon, which it would probably be where people just, collectively go crazy. Like, what's the flower stuff, the Dutch flower type of thing. Anyway. And then you end up with, I almost said Romeo and Juliet, but it's West Side Story, which is, I guess, based on Romeo and Juliet, where you got like Spielberg has the Italians versus the Puerto Ricans, but the Spanish isn't dubbed in the movie. So it's like, you better be bilingual, otherwise you're not going to really enjoy that movie that you paid $15 for. And, you know, it kind of begs the question. It's like, well, why didn't you do the Italian part in Italian also? I mean, if you're going to go full, you know, developmentally disabled, then you might as well accelerate into it. And it's like, yeah, how well did that movie do? I'm sure San Francisco, LA, Chicago, you know, the woke sections, I'm sure they loved it, but anyone other than that probably skipped out on a West Side Story. So Disney is fully committed to going down this pathway, and nobody is twisting their arms. They will happily run the company into the ground, or maybe just close to bankruptcy before someone says, this is, perhaps we don't actually want to, you know, burn down $1 billion propaganda machine. Disney's not Disney. It's a propaganda machine now. It has been completely subsumed by these types. And they think they're doing the Lord's work, but the Lord being Lucifer, because seriously, these people are nuts. Not hyperbolically nuts. There's a lot of people that are drinking the Kool-Aid. They are absolutely drinking the Kool-Aid. Disney is not the company from what you remember, and you can look at the analytics of this channel. The average listener, I think, is a 45-year-old male. So you're over a certain age. You remember what Disney was like. If you're 45, so when were you born? The late 70s. And that's the average. And the thing is, even if you're younger, because Disney has so many movies out there that you can watch Disney over the years and watch them progress. And they were very good at one time. I mean, not only for kids movies, it was kids movies that adults could watch and it would still be entertaining. Like pretty much all their stuff in the 80s and 90s. You can go back and watch something from like 1990 and see for yourself. In my opinion, I think that was about the time that Disney movies really blew up. They were wildly successful. They were putting out more and more movies, and it was 1990. What was that, like VHS? You still had VHS rentals and then DVD rentals, and I think you probably still had like Blockbuster and stuff like that. And maybe it was like, I'm trying to think like what network it got on. Like there was cable. I'm not sure if cable was showing it, but believe it or not, the like going to Blockbuster and renting a VHS or a DVD was it was actually a lot of fun. Because you got to see people from your neighborhood, and you talk to people about movies, and every once in a while, it's like going to a computer store back in the day, and you're talking to people in the computer store, and like if you have a question, you will find a nerd in a computer store who can tell you the difference in latency for 40 pin ribbons versus the new 80 pin ribbons. I mean, you can get into the most esoteric, bizarre conversations with nerds in stores who will try to convince you that Unix or Linux or whatever the hell is the master operating system, and you need to convert. There's a lot of interesting people who are very focused on movies, which is actually why I kind of enjoy listening to Matt Jarbo, even though he's such a bleeding pussy, because at least he's passionate about films, though he's such a pussy. It's hard to listen to him, but he cares about movies, so that kind of makes up for something. The thing is, you can go back and watch those Disney movies from that time when Disney just, like in 1990-ish, around that time, Disney started to, like, if you look at their growth curve, that was probably when they went from linear to geometrical. That was the time Disney just was a household name. And the thing is, that's how SJWs work. They act like parasites, and then they bait and switch you. You hear Disney and you expect something. And what you get instead is race-swapped butt sex. And if you mention you don't want that, then suddenly you're an istophobic Nazi, which doesn't help sales, but it doesn't matter because all this has to play out as it is written. And in the meantime, you get people who are desperate for dopamine clicks, for cat ladies to seek attention and virtue signal over a bunch of nonsense. So you got Heather Antos, who is obviously desperate for some attention, and she uses a clip that's accurate, talking about toy sales, but she wants a virtue signal. And these people hate the truth, and they hate anything associated with truth. They have a narrative. They want to stick to the narrative. If they see that somebody's going off script, and especially if you're a POC and you are a Christian, conservative, or you're just a realist, and you start to go off script, then you're kind of doubly screwed, because they have the soft bigotry of low expectations, and also SJWs think they own POCs. I mean, the DNC definitely owns your vote if you're POC, which means like once you get them elected, it's like, so can we get some funding for this POC college? Why would we fund you? We already have your vote. Like, if you want funding, you have to get it from Trump, which is funny because Trump did fund him to the tune of $1 billion, which is like, oh well, yeah, but we still got to vote Democrat. Like, why exactly? Like, why would you see the facts before your eyes and still reject what's before your eyes? I don't know. That sounds like a religion. Anyway, so what toys do boys want? They want boy toys. Unless you're like a woke mom who can brainwash their kid to wanting, I don't know, a girl's toys. And it's like the kid will do what they want to please mom or the parents. But, you're talking about not very many. That's not 90% of kids. Kids want what they want. And you can try to, like, oh, we're raising our kid agender. It's like, okay, still buying them clothes. I mean, good luck with that. You're going to mess up a lot of kids that way. But it's kind of Darwinism, so I don't really know what to say about that. People know what sells. They call girls' toys peg warmers. The Rose Tico, Mary Sue, Captain Marvel type of stuff, it just sits on the shelf. You can't force kids to buy Rose Tico, Wonder Woman type of toys. Boys are not girls. Stores know what sells. I mean, they have it in the hard. They have the hardest of hard information. They see what goes up on the shelf and what leaves the shelf. And barring, theft, it's like you can tell you precisely what is moving and what isn't moving. It's like that's why the Rose Tico toys were selling like a $15 toy is suddenly down to like $6.99. And even then, it's like you can't. There's at no price that you can sell something that somebody doesn't want. I mean, if somebody's not in the mood for Rose Tico, I mean, look at the movie with Rose Tico. Look at the toy. It's like, what is brown? Like, how would you describe like the feeling of brown? Or if that's too racially tinged these days, like vanilla. But vanilla that's not very flavorful. It just has the hint of vanilla, like vanilla flavored tea, which actually I have and it's really good. But just the hint of vanilla. And when you're in the mood for chocolate, it's like, well, I don't want it at any cost. It's like, well, here's a Ferrari for you. It's like, well, I don't want a Ferrari because I know I would crash it. So even like I couldn't do anything with a Ferrari. It's just it's like you're giving somebody a rifle that at full cock. Believe it or not, there was a rifle that did this at full cock. Every once in a while, the cam that holds the cock back to the spring tension would fail, and the cock would fail. So it would, the striker would move forward and strike. If there's something in the chamber, it would hit. It's like every once in a while that happens. Like, well, what price could I sell you this rifle for? It's like, well, if you can't keep it safely at full cock, it's probably not worth having at any price because it's unchangeable, immutably a dangerous object. Anyway, everything changes when it's your money at stake. Obviously, other people's money is different from your money. Heather Antos doesn't have money at risk. She's not selling anything. She doesn't have kids. And unfortunately, she's never going to have kids, which is kind of a shame because she's tall, good looking. She's well put together. I don't know if she's straight or what. But it's a shame. It's a shame that she's in her 30s. She didn't have kids by now. She's probably not going to have kids, but it's a shame when you see someone like, just because she's woke doesn't mean she's an idiot. She's not, but she's just got this bizarro viewpoint. And the thing is, having kids changes your worldview. It changes everything, which is a shame. Like when they go from these kind of like bitter chicks, it's like, if you had 2 kids, you wouldn't be like this. It just changes everything. So she's talking about stuff that she doesn't know about because she wants some attention. I don't know what she is. She's kind of an editor for something. And the thing is, to her credit, she actually is a pretty decent artist. She's a statistical outlier. She's into comics and she's into this kind of pop cultural garbage. And most 35-year-old women are not because they're busy raising kids. And it is pop culture garbage. Everything now is absolute garbage because, and the thing is, the left used to be on board that concept of, oh yeah, this is just soulless corporate crap. It's like, oh, you guys should check out Comicsgate. Oh, no, those guys are actual Nazis, so we can't support Comicsgate. Yeah, but they're not this corporate, like everyone in CG. There's probably 100 projects in CG selling everything from toys to comics to clothing to books to all kinds of stuff. And it's not the same soulless corporate crap because it's not being by committee. It's like Clint Stoker selling Downcast. It's, him and Peter Samedi. It's like, these are small owned businesses. Everyone's got a comic. It's like, well, you're now, this is your small owned business. And it's weird to see the left completely do a 180 to suddenly be on board with CNN, corporate America. Like, back in, it was only 20 years ago when the left was talking about the military-industrial complex, back when Bush was 911, that kind of thing. And it's like, so that all changed? You guys were just completely on board, believing anything that CNN dishes out, any kind of corporate garbage, any kind of Disney Star Wars, because the right laughed at 2015 Disney Star Wars, the left got on board with it. That's kind of an interesting thought in and of itself, is like, you can manipulate the left better than the right, because if the right is for something, the left will knee-jerk be against it, or the reverse doesn't happen. Like, if the left will say stuff like, well, how would you right-wingers feel if black people open carried and went to these events? I'm like, hey, right on. Open carry. Go for these events. Second Amendment, brother. Oh, well, they're talking about the Kyle Rittenhouse, the Rosenbaum thing. Like, how would you feel if the races were reversed and it was a black guy who deleted Rosenbaum? But, like, I answered this specific question on Twitter. I said, Rosenbaum was someone who attacked children. That black guy would be a hero because he deleted someone who attacked children. That's doing the Lord's work. It doesn't work when they reverse things because, like, we don't want the bad things, and they are in this bizarro position of they have to defend someone like Rosenbaum, the guy with the short eyes who attacked children, who was literally released from a mental hospital that morning before Kyle introduced him to the 223 caliber aspirin. And like, how do you stop pedophiles with a 70 grain 2,800 feet per second ibuprofen? That stops them pretty quickly. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you guys on Odyssey, Bit Chute, join the Telegram, or the various other ways to get a hold of me.